And I want to keep this discussion going, and we'll make this topic somewhat quicker so we have time to get to our other ones. I thought about this. I was actually talking to Carlos about this, and I wanted to bring this up with you guys. I wanted to revisit the topic real quick of the iconic Darth Vader. And we've already kind of hinted at this in our first topic that we've talked about, right? Because a lot of times with collecting, we see a figure and we just, like I said, I describe us, a lot of us, at least sometimes what I do, it's like a dog chasing cars, right? You see something like, oh, shiny new thing, and you go after it. That's what happens. But then when you sit back and think about it, you say, how many Darth Vaders do I actually need in my collection, right? And to me, I started to think about this because to me, the Kenobi Vader is the most unique Darth Vader. I think it's the coolest looking Darth Vader because if you put that on your shelf and you look and anyone walks in your collection room, that is the Darth Vader that's going to grab people's attention over any other Darth Vader because it's so unique looking. And not just because it's unique, we tend as collectors value battle damage figures. Like when we talk about the figures that most people like going for, think about the battle damage or the battling cap from Civil War, right? Iron Man Mark 85 battle damage. The battle damage Thanos, that's probably the Thanos that most people want in their collection, right? We tend to really like battle damage figures because the unique battle damage Terminator, DX13. There's just a lot you can do with it, right? But not exactly where I'm going with this topic. I want to share something real quick, and I want to share, this is actually part of the discussion that I think a lot of people have slept on. So, we're talking about iconic, right? And I was actually explaining this to Carlos. And I said, you know what? I have two Darth Vaders. Well, I will have two Darth Vaders. I'll have the Kenobi Vader and I have this one. And I was thinking, what is the most, if we're talking about literal iconic Vader, right? I think you could argue, in my opinion, I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this and what your opinion is. And the chat, let us know what you think the iconic Darth Vader is. If you're talking about the most iconic scene in Star Wars history, I think it's got to be Luke, I am your father, right? Or I am your father. I think that's got to be, I think if you ask anyone on the regular street, they say, I am your father. They say, Luke, I am your father, which is not the line technically, but it's the general premise, right? This figure recreates that scene. It has the base. This is in most people's eyes, the best Star Wars film ever created. Most people consider Empire the best, right? I would argue anyway, maybe the chat can disagree with me. Maybe they'll say Return of the Jedi, but I would argue that most people think Empire is the best Star Wars film ever made. When you talk about Infinity War or whatever, they say, oh, that's Marvel's Empire Strikes Back, right? That's what it is. So I think people might be sleeping on Empire Vader for that reason because it's a beautiful Vader. Maybe it's a little bit simpler of a Vader. Like Kiko said, maybe it's a repackage. But if we're talking about the most iconic Darth Vader, this is the most iconic scene for Darth Vader, in my opinion. And this recreates it with a beautiful base, a beautiful figure, and probably the best Star Wars film ever made. So, and probably the best, he just whooped Luke's ass in that fight, basically. So it was great. But Kiko, I want to ask you, if we're talking about the most iconic Darth Vader figure, what do you think it is? Or you think people are sleeping on the Empire Vader? I still think if you had to have one Vader in your collection, it would be Kenobi because it's the coolest. But as far as iconic, what do you think about this?
That's a very tough call because Empire is my favorite movie. This is one of my favorite scenes. I've actually seen the little videos of people showing their kids, this moment and how they respond to it. And they show them realizing that that's his dad. And when you put it with the prequels and kind of what Ben was saying a little bit ago, the final culmination of Anakin's story being taken advantage, this is when his humanity starts to come through. Because he said, I'm not a machine anymore. I do have a heart. I still want my kid, type of thing. I mean, we can get really deep into that if you wanted to, but I want to go against the grain on this one because although this is probably the most famous scene, I don't think it's the most iconic because the most iconic scene for me is when the door opens on the Tantive 4 or Tantive 4, whatever they call it, and he walks through onto the screen for the first time ever in 1977. You see Vader, the White Halls, coming through the smoke. People lost their shit on that because they're like, oh my God, who is this? That was Darth Vader's first motion or first moment on screen. And if you're talking iconic, that is the icon because the black against the white is undeniable. It is the coolest, moment that changed movie making forever at that moment. So I think the New Hope Vader, specifically the Tarkin 2-pack one, because I think his body is better. And I think the paint apps and all that stuff overall. So I'm going with a New Hope Vader, the Tarkin 2-pack one, because that moment when he walks through changed the world, essentially, with that character. So that's it for me.
Yeah, that's a good point, Kiko. And that, dude, honestly, I've always wanted that Darth Vader, but like Ben referenced with the Han and Chewie, he's so hard to find now because I don't want the regular New Hope Vader. I want the two-pack Tarkin Vader because, like you said, it's a vast improvement over the original. And I've always wanted a New Hope
Yeah.
Vader. That's what I have a 501st Vader costume that I wear to events and stuff, and it's a New Hope because I love the weathered sort of beat up look of it. It's very like I don't know,
Yeah, and the
just
one little tusk missing and things.
yeah,
I
like it's
love
just
that. That's so
awesome, bro.
cool.
I just love it. Just like it's battle damage, basically. Again, we go back to battle damage. But Kiko, to answer this real quick before I move on to Ben, but if you had to pick one Hot Toys Vader figure, it'd probably still be Kenobi, no?
No, I would say it would be the Tarkin 2-pack Vader because
Okay.
I didn't care as much for the emotion of seeing a cracked skull Anakin or whatever, just because I didn't like the Kenobi show overall. I didn't think it was well done.
Right.
So it doesn't hit me as much as this moment when you first see Darth Vader for who he is in Star Wars.
That makes sense. Well, Ben, give us your thoughts on this topic. What do you think? What's the iconic Darth Vader figure for you and their iconic Darth Vader outfit or version for you?
Such a good question because I don't have a Darth Vader in my Star Wars lineup
See,
quite
and now
yet.
you have options.
I have like almost too many options, which is
Right.
the reason it's such a good question. So I've got the Anakin one on pre-order right now from the Obi-Wan Kenobi series because I agree with you. That's easily one of the coolest Vaders I've seen. I remember kind of like what Kiko said when it came to A New Hope. That first time you see Darth Vader walking down the hallway, it's like 100%. Who is this? Wow, he's badass. That is scary. I do think for me though, Empire Strikes Back is still the most iconic film, at least in terms of when I think back to my love of Star Wars. As just the original series, kind of in a like a nutshell, because that's also that we see the bad guy win, end of the movie where you're so used to seeing your heroes win, and when Vader comes out on top in that film and you see all your heroes broken and we find out that Darth Vader is Luke's father and like all of the things, that's like oh my god, like what is even the next movie even going to look like? Where did they pick up the pieces from this? Now somebody mentioned it in the comments and I actually agree. I think one of the reasons that the Empire Strikes Back version works so well is if it comes with the base that helps to represent that scene. If not, I do find it still difficult to identify some of the differences between all of the Vaders. They're so similar and yet subtly different in so many ways. And unless you're an absolute Darth Vader super fan, I think most people would walk past and be like, "Oh, that's awesome! You got a really wicked Darth Vader in your collection," and you could almost fit him in to any scene that you wanted to. You have to be a very hardcore collector to know the difference. So for me, if I had to choose one iconic version, I think it would still be the Empire Strikes Back version because of my love for that film specifically. But the challenge that I have is now I've got the pre-order version for the Obi-Wan figure coming. I also really like the head sculpt and the offering of this new Vader. Sans the light up blue helmet. I don't think I would get that version. I think I'm gonna get, if I get it, I'll just get the standard. Um, but I like that head sculpt. I think having an evolution of Darth Vader's is something that I may actually try to attempt in my collection instead of just having one. So I think I'd want to see that Padawan Anakin when he's still pretty bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and he's got his little baby curls in the front. I'd like to then see dark side Anakin standing beside it. I'd then like to see my like an Empire Strikes Back or the Obi-Wan Kenobi version, and then the final version that we got to see recently here with the Return of the Jedi. I think kind of four versions like that transition of that character would be a pretty cool looking display. But if I had to only pick one and eliminate all others, it would probably be The Empire Strikes Back. The only exception I will say is I know guys like Zach from Collecting Weekly love the Rogue One Vader, the
Oh,
actual
dude.
figure itself, and that was also a really cool, iconic scene for Vader when he goes down the hallway and just absolutely smashes. Uh, Also really cool. So definitely a highlight.
Dude, because we had a lot of comments, people saying that the Rogue One Vader's icon. It is, bro. It is. It just Rogue One is a really good film, but it's not quite as iconic as the original trilogy. You know what I mean? So, despite how good that Vader scene is, that might be the best scene in Star Wars, period, in terms of quality, because it's just so awesome and it's so well done. When I was in the theater, I was like, this is insane. But yeah, and I was thinking the same thing that Nick was. He was saying, just wait until we get a Revenge of the Sith Vader, that you're going to have like a burn up Anakin as like a sort of thing, you know, its own little piece. That's going to be something that comes eventually too.
And a little
So
voice box that says no.
right, yeah, dude, that would be pretty funny, right? So why not? Like Hot Toys would do something like that. But yeah, I'm with you guys. There's so many good Vaders. That's why I like this topic, because you know, most of us are not going to collect them all, because like you said, Ben, they are so slightly different, right? The only real difference between them is maybe it has a head sculpt this time, or the base is different. Other than that, there's like a slightly different cod piece. Maybe the armor is slightly a little bit shinier. Maybe the chest box is a little bit different, but just barely. It's kind of, Iron Man has more discrepancy between versions than Vader does, which is saying something. So it's, you know, you're not going to buy them all. So
I did feel like I kept waiting for the next one though, and then the next one came out, and then I'm like, okay, well maybe I'll see what the next one looks like, and then the next one came out, and I'm like, okay, well, like at some point you have to make a choice, so it has to, for me, it has to go back to the movie that gave me the most like emotion, anyways, and I still think that's Empire. That's why I got the Boba Fett from Empire Strikes Back in my collection versus even the Return of the Jedi Boba Fett, which is a really badass outfit, but I didn't love the movie as much as the Empire. So.
Same here. Well, guys, let us know in the comments below what you think about the iconic Darth Vader. I've been seeing some great comments already, but if you're watching this on replay, drop a comment. Let us know what you think. So thanks so much, guys, for your thoughts on that one.